Welcome to Inside the She Cave, Trailblazers, Innovators, Rule Breakers. I am your host, Cindy Glanzrock. On today's episode, we are honored to have Dominique Jackson, who astoundingly defines what it means to be a trailblazer, innovator, and rule breaker.
When I came into my being, there were many representations of the type of woman that I could be. And I had to pick apart from here, pick apart from there, and then process them to see if they actually aligned with me, or if I was just trying to trend, or if it was really just a part of me.
She's famously known as Elektra Evangelista on the FX series Pose. She's also known as an icon in Ballroom, a pageant queen, a runway model for Terry Mugler and the Blondes, and an activist and public speaker for the LGBTQ+ community. Dominique's journey as a transsexual woman speaks about her experiences with transitioning, immigrating from Trinidad and Tobago, and then finding her identity in America, while teaching us lessons about acceptance and empathy. She shares about the importance of faith, the impact of her book, The Transexual from Tobago, and the importance of support and inclusivity. So here is our insightful and exciting conversation with Dominique Jackson. Well, I'm here with what I would describe as, if I grew up as a little girl and had to say, I wanted to be someone that was a feeling, kind, humane person who's respectful, who's faithful, who has strength, resilience, intelligence, humanity, defiance, perseverance. I might have repeated myself. It would be a woman that kind of looks like the woman beside us named Dominique Jackson. And she is, to me, the light in so many people's lives. And I just want to thank you for letting me learn about you and know about you, and now get to actually talk to you inside the She Cave. This is so cool.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much for having me. And the way you described me feels really wonderful. And I thank you for that. Many times we do not know how to accept compliments, and I am learning to accept them. So I really thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me to be on your platform. And thank you for using your platform for such wonderful enlightenment to the world.
Well, it's interesting how I was reading about this world that you've created for yourself, because you really created your life. You might have come into life, but you created your life. And you are like a manifestation. It's like, really, to me, you came down from heavens. I know you came from a man and a woman, supposedly.
Well, that's what I remember.
But in reading your book, which I have to say, I think that the cover needs to have a picture of you on it. But anyway, in reading your book, I have lots of things highlighted throughout, because it felt like I was studying you. It felt like a study of Dominique Jackson. It's called The Transsexual from Tobago. Where I've been, where I am, where I'm going. Wow, what a story.
At the point of not feeling that life would continue for me, I saw no hope in anything, but I had many dreams, and most of all, I had faith. But hope was really just not there. I had finally decided to go to therapy. My marriage was on the outs, and I had to find a way to release everything. I had been an immigrant, living in the U.S. without status. I'm trans. I am just attempting just to live life and try to enjoy life. And it wasn't happening. I was at my lowest. And I went into therapy, and starting therapy helped me so much. And my therapist said to me, you should write. So I said, okay, I'll journal. Yeah, let's do this. And I started to write, and I started to see myself. And then I thought to myself, there's no way that a Black trans Caribbean immigrant would ever make it in this world that wasn't set up for me. So I wanted to write. I wanted to leave behind something that told my story. And with the mortality rate of trans people, I was really reaching that. And so I wanted to publish before I turned 40. And because I didn't think I was going to live past that, I just started writing, and it became like therapy, and it was a part of me. And my therapist suggested that I publish. And I thought, who's going to want to publish something like this? And especially with a title that was so bold. I didn't want people to pick up the book and look at it and go, oh, well, no, what's the story? I wanted them to know exactly what they were getting into. So it was not even a choice. It was just a decision. Here, this is in front of me. I'm going to get it. I'm going to read it. And maybe I'll find out about someone. Maybe I'll be able to help my child. If my child is like this, maybe I have a niece or someone. So I felt like this was what I was leaving to the world. Because again, some people I did not tell. I didn't tell a lot of people my situation.
The situation of transitioning or moving to the States or trying to...
All of it. All of it. The situation
you kept it inside? You kept it inside?
Yes. No one knew that I was living in the States as an undocumented immigrant. And I knew that if they found out, they would rip me apart. At that time, my family was unable to file the paperwork. So it was a matter of navigating life, figuring things out. And I went through all of that. 2006, my mother did her citizenship and filed my paperwork. And, I financed that. And so I knew I had some security in the country. And during that time, it was survival. It was, you're not allowed to work, but you have to eat. And if you make any money, you have to pay taxes. So it was like, how am I supposed to navigate all of this? And I was fortunate enough to be able to perform as a showgirl. Sex work was something that was not for me at all. It was disastrous.
Is it for anyone?
Well, there is a difference for everyone. For some people, they're in a place where it is what they do, it is who they are. And, it's not my place to tell someone that what they're doing is wrong or what they're doing is harming themselves. They have to come to that realization for themselves if they do feel like they're being harmed. But for me personally, it was not something that I desired. I believe that I should never, ever have to negotiate with someone for my body. My body is a temple and it is not something that has a price. And so it was very harming to my entire being and my upbringing and the knowledge. It caused so much harm to me. I really had to get out. So I started doing shows, performing, and I became a showgirl. And that's how you see I have these.
Where were you a showgirl? And tell us about.
Well, I performed at these. So their nightlife in New York City was so different in the late 90s, 2000s. I was able to go into clubs like Crash. There was a club called Esquilita, and they gave me my big break. And they had a cast of showgirls. Karen Covergirl, God bless her soul. Victoria Lace. Deborah Dominique, Lorena St. Cartier, some amazing women. And our show director was Angel Sheridan. And she gave us that sense of really working in theater. She was really harsh at times. She did not acknowledge a trans identification. And that made it harder. But it was deal with this woman who doesn't acknowledge a trans identification, says it to your face, and you drive her home at night. Or do you go out into the street and negotiate with men for money? And Angel Sheridan taught me a lot. The cast of Esquilita, being a part of that, taught me a lot. Then I became a part of the cast of a club called Crash in Queens. I got to feel like I had value. I got to feel like someone who was able to have a job. And even though at times it was difficult doing shows, but I was also in that space of what I love to do, which is act, be on stage. I had to learn music. I had to lip sync. I got to choreograph my dances. I also got to show some of the youth that, looked up to me that I didn't have to do sex work, that I could perform in the community. And some of them became dancers. And I went on to pageants and did Continental, and I ended up, I believe, with 6 crowns.
And those are a couple of them behind you?
Yes, they are. I believe the one on the top is my crown from actually one of my first crowns. I believe it's either Miss Coliseum or Miss Auntie M's. And it's really amazing that my first crown, I won that in 2000. And that's when I decided to go after my life.
And that was a beauty pageant,
Yes, these are beauty pageants. And it was in 2000, I decided to go after my life. And so I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I went and I did a contest. And then I won in Long Island, and I won I won the title, and I became Miss Auntie M's. Then I got cast at Escuelita as an understudy. Then I became Miss Coliseum, and these were all acts and art. So that kept me in that environment.
By the
And
way,
so
I read in your book that they were expensive. And at one point you were like, I don't want to win because it's going to cost me time and money that I don't have. And then you'd win.
yes, that was the thing about pageants for me. For many, as a trans woman, I realized that it was difficult to work. As an immigrant, there's no job, right? And I refused to have to negotiate with men for my body and then take that money and go into a pageant that I wasn't guaranteed to win, and then come back home and not be able to pay my rent. So I believed in trying to sustain a life rather than do the pageants. But the pageants were a way for me to express myself, continue in my art, and earn some money, because once you became the queen of a club, they gave you bookings constantly. So that was my goal, to just never have to walk the streets.
And by the
Go
way,
through.
I heard you had a nice support network when I read about it between your adopted family and you, like a lot of
Yes.
people were behind you. You spoke of your father and your mother, which I sometimes was confused because they're like the biological family, and then there's the
Ah,
and then I
yes.
realized, but that you had a nice support circle of people that really cared and pushed you forward, it sounded like.
And it is because of these people, Tommy Ross, my dad, got both my dads, God bless their souls, Larry Williams and Hector Extravaganza. Amongst the plethora of people, I feel like this. If you born, like there was a lady at the train station who I was going in for castings, and there was one day I just did not have the train fare. I thought I did, down to the last quarters. She looked at me and she said, "One day you're going to be something." She was like, "Go through the thing." And
Wow.
she let me through. And it was like I always felt like I had these supporting angels. So, but the problem was I didn't really focus on all of the support that I had at that time. I was so focused on all of the trauma and the situations that I was going through and trying to make it. So to this day, I'm very, appreciative of everything that even if you bought me a drink when I was down, I'm so happy for that. It really helped. But having a support system, having my mom, Tommy Ross, my mom, Jessica Fox, my aunt, Brenda Milan, these people, my dad now, Samson,
And
these
again, these
people,
are your adopted family members, right?
well, I don't call them adopted. I call them chosen and proven. And I
Chosen and
say,
proven.
yes, chosen and proven. And my sister Tabitha is another one of my support system. My brother Sean Coleman, who now runs Destination Tomorrow, founded. I had these people around me that were doing it. And so I believe that we have a lot of examples around us, and we do have the support, but sometimes we don't tap into that.
Got
So
it.
I had to tap into that. Even though I had that support, I still had to do the work on me. And that's where therapy came in. And that's where writing was a passion of mine. But I started writing in like 2000 when I first met my ex-husband. And I stopped I was on a bench in a park near our apartment. And I stopped and I said, "Oh, I'm not ready to face these things yet." And then flash forward to 2012, I go to a conference called the BHAP conference in Dallas, Texas. And at this conference, I see women that are trans that are successful and have gone through education to the point that they have PhDs. And these were my sisters. These were my sisters that came from, and it motivated me. So when I got back to New York,
Great.
and knowing what my therapist was saying, I said, "Let me write." And I started to write, and it was difficult, because there I was looking at me and thinking to myself, there are things I'm not going to put in here. As the thoughts came, as it was flowing, because it was like a flush. It was all this stuff inside of me that I kept in, because as a woman, you're told you're not supposed to show your emotions. You're too sensitive. You're too this. No, I was in pain. And I was trying to mask that with going, "I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything is okay." And my book allowed me to face me. And in writing it, I just kept writing. And there were nights where I would write through tears and saying to myself, "Gosh, what happened to you? And then I started to blame other people. Like I got upset with my mom and my father. And then as I continued to write, I had to go back and really write the truth. And that is that, and write from a perspective of telling the story, not telling my feeling. I had to realize that I was the one in control. I had to take control of my life. Yeah. And I kept writing, and the tears came, and publishing my book came at the time when my green card was ready.
Oh, wow.
So my brother Michael Robeson started to get me speaking gigs to assist me in paying for all the fees and stuff I had to pay for the green card, because everyone that, well, not everyone, but many of the people that loved and cared for me, some could not afford to help me, and others that could help me just did not want to. And I had to come to that realization.
And you're not Jennifer Pritzker. Some of the audience won't know that Jennifer Pritzker is transgender. She's from the Pritzker family in Chicago, and I think she's worth $13 billion. So I don't know if you remember one of your speeches, but you were like, if you have $1 billion, give $1 million to these children or these kids on the streets that need it, that are going through a difficult time. And I said, you're so right, because there's a lot of people, maybe not a lot of billionaire transgender, but the ones that are really need to support or get to support your community, hopefully.
Yeah. And well, this is something that I feel that people have to do from within themselves. It has to be your heart. And, me personally, I cannot look at myself and know that I have a certain amount of wealth, and then I'm looking at others that are hungry. My grandmother taught me from very young that people will be different from who you are. That does not make them less than. That does not put you in any kind of power over anyone else. We're all supposed to see each other as human beings. And that's how it was for me.
When you mention your grandmother, is that your biological grandmother?
My biological grandmother.
Okay. Because you seem very close to her. You seem like you had a very special relationship.
She is my queen. She is my everything. She's one person in my family that never abandoned me. Like, we spoke almost every single weekend. There was this tradition of calling every Sunday. And I would call some folk and they would seem like they didn't want to speak to me, but she would always look forward to the call. It was shocking to see how understanding she really was. She always wanted to make sure that I was okay. She wanted to make sure that I was doing well. She always wanted to see me. But I was so afraid because I thought I had embarrassed her. I had done so much wrong by being in my truth. And in all actuality, I was not. If your truth embarrasses someone, then they're not for you. But she's always been there. And so, finishing with the book.
Back to the book. And back to you, but your grandmother is an important part of the book, so I'm glad you shared that.
Yes. In finishing with the book, I buckled down and I wrote, because I wanted my story to help anyone that may pick it up, whether it was a parent, whether it was another trans person, whether it was just someone in the street. And I didn't want it to be a read that you can carry on the train. I wanted it to be something that you really had to sit down and say, I really want to read this.
Train.
Right.
That's a thick book.
Yeah, it was. I double spaced it, everything. I self-published. I just wanted it to be a thing. And Michael Robeson had me going around and stuff. And the name came about because I didn't want it to be hidden. I wanted people to understand that the transsexual does exist. If we're talking transgender, you're talking about, yes, you have that transition mentally. But for some of us, that transition is not just mental, it is physical. It is going through puberty, having characteristic traits of the sex that you're told that you're not. So it is, yeah.
It's complicated.
It can be very complicated, but it is very simple. The complication comes in when folks are trying to challenge something and telling you that who you are, what you are is not natural, when in all actuality it is. If we study biology, we know that you don't have a separate woman that creates males and you don't have a separate woman that creates females. Actually, it's because of technology now that we know. So we do know that there is a bimodal distribution that occurs during the trimesters of pregnancies. And because of this bimodal distribution, we do not have every woman looking alike and every man looking alike. You're going to have characteristics, traits that are going to cross and intersect. So the ideology of us being these separate entities as male and female is, to me, kind of corrupt and misogynistic in the sense of putting the male in power and making the female less than. So most of our interactions that we have come to accept and, and fight for today is actually us really being subjugated and being told you are less than. So this is why you have to do this. My grandmother explained to me that the person that's cleaning your house, right, is the person that you should be nicest to. The person that's cooking your food should be the person you're nicest to because they are nourishing you. They're giving you things that you are unable to do for yourself, whether it's because of a disability, whether it's because you don't have the time, so this person now becomes a part of your journey, and they are to be respected. They are to be treated fairly. So I do not believe in hierarchies. I do not believe in one mentally unstable person sitting in power and making up rules. I believe that it has to be a collective. I believe that you have to have experience on things that you're going to make decisions on. So therefore, there should not be a lot of men making decisions for policies that involve women. And there should not be a lot of people who have not experienced poverty making decisions and deciding on a spending budget for those that are in poverty or on borderline poverty or middle class. It's unfair for you to say that your dinners are $150 a night, but you have policy where you're providing for people and you're saying that they're supposed to eat off of $25 a night. So we should want the same for others as for ourselves. And that's what my grandmother also, one of my main mantras is do unto others as you have others do unto you.
Yes. Well, I asked about one of your mantras, but I don't think you're going to say praise the Lord because we know what happened when you did that. And it's so interesting because I kept thinking you're faithful and your faith has been always important throughout the book. Yet your faith is what was the bane of your existence early in your life. And it's such an interesting duality reading about you and the trauma you had as a young person and what you lived through as a young person, and you wouldn't express it because those people would turn you into the evil person versus the person who was doing the evil to you. And I thought, wow, what a psychological thriller. Not that it's
but that is what basically happens, as you see today in many of the movements, and especially in the Me Too movement. You have where people are coming forward and speaking of these experiences of being molested, of being raped, of being sexually harassed, of a sexual assault, SA in general. And for some people, it was an okay thing. It was what you had to, it was what you had to do in order to get that job. And so the embarrassment and the shame of that, you keep that within you. As a child, I didn't understand these things. It was also confusing for me because it was, hey, I'm getting this attention and I'm getting the attention that I want, but I don't understand what's going on. And why is it coming from this person? But if it doesn't come from this person, then where am I going to get it? So maybe I should accept it from this person. But then no, this is really wrong because you're supposed to be the one that is supposed to be my guide to the higher power, and my higher power, I believe in God. That's my faith. So it led for me now to either I went down that path of, not believing and denying my faith and talking about my faith harmed me. But in retrospect, my faith actually was very present. My faith taught me, because what it taught me was that you cannot rely on a man to provide for you. So let me put it to this way. Man can't give you God. You have to find him yourself. He lives within you. He's within your heart. And all these things people tell you about how you're going to get to God and what your relationship with God would look like is from their perspective. It's from their personal experience. It's from what they know. We're individuals, uniquely created. And I believe that we have our own relationship with our higher power. And if you're atheist, I do respect that also. But for those who have that belief and have that faith, whether it's the Hindu religion or the Muslim religion, it's a faith in a higher power. And when you try to take that away from someone, it can absolutely destroy them.
Oh, yeah.
Here you have a child growing up and you're taught this and you're believing in this and you're seeing this and you're knowing this and this is what you have to do. And then because of one thing that's not even your fault, now you're a different person, you're a demon, you're an abomination, you're all the things, all to protect those that are inflicting the harm on us, because you can't see these masculine, these what we society calls as these macho masculine men. We can't see them as perpetrators. We can't see them as predators, because then our society falls apart, right? But that's all in our heads.
Right.
So
absolutely, I think it's but society can put this on you, or you can also not let society put it on you,
and that's what I did.
That's what you did.
That's what I did. I said to myself, no, you're not going to make me feel like I did this to myself. You know, I was taken advantage of. I was a child. And that does not mean that my life ends. What that means is now I have a story to tell. And it went into the book. And I was going to make damn sure that I told that story, because what happened is after the book was published and I was sitting at GMHC for a talk,
and
one of the people
tell people what GMHC is that might not know.
GMH is Gay Men's Health Crisis. It's one of the organizations in New York City. And at times I wish they would change their name, but you know what? It is a space for you know what? It is what it is.
For LGBTQ plus, right? It's not just
LGBTQIA plus identified folks. But when you see Gay Men's Health Crisis, you are thinking, okay, we're only catering to gay men. Exactly. And so the name has to align with the inclusivity. We have, yes, evolve. Yeah, where was I? So what I did now was I saw the negative side of this. I saw people that had been affected. And by going into that space at GMHC, and there was a gentleman there that came to me and he said, I read your book. And I said, well, thank you. And he was from the islands and he said, your story is true. And when he said that, there was something that came over me. It was like fear and relief and like, oh my gosh, it was like someone really understands. And he looked at me and he said, my partner died because of that person. He said, many people died because of that person. You were lucky. And that's where I feel like I stepped into really wanting to protect lives. Finding out in 2000.
And after that was during the HIV epidemic period?
Yes, it was. This was in the 90s. So from the year 1993 to about when I found out that, you know, he had passed away, I thought I was HIV positive. I didn't understand anything about HIV or anything like that. I thought, okay, yes, I am definitely positive. And it wasn't until the year 2000 when I decided to fight for me that I went to Callan Lord, another organization it's Callan Lord is like nationwide now, I believe, or close to it.
And I saw you received an award from them.
Yes, I did last year. That was really awesome.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. Thank you. Callan Lord, I found out that I was HIV negative. But in finding out, the process was so traumatizing of waiting and going in and not knowing. And then I saw people that had those positive results and I saw how they broke down. And so in my joy in that moment, I thought to myself, you are still affected by this. So I've always said, you may not be infected, but we are all affected by this. And so I had to put myself into my community to make sure that I warned people, to make sure that people understood that if they were HIV positive, they could have help. And all of this, again, in the book, summarized how. So I used the negativity that happened to me for me to be able to turn around and say, you know what, I don't want this to happen to anyone else. And I have to face it.
So the book helped you become the person that you probably already were, but you are today by transitioning, by writing about it and experiencing it and sharing it. So do you feel that the book helped you evolve and be
Oh, of
yourself?
course.
Yeah.
That book helped me evolve to beyond the points. It brought me a calm, a peace. It helped me to stop arguing. It helped me to really, there was an enlightenment after unleashing everything. It was just like, it's all here. This is the truth. This is my life. This is like, it was a freedom, and it helped me.
Right.
And what it did was it prepared me to be able to go into polls with an open mind, with much of the trauma kind of dealt with, in that space.
See, I describe you as this energetic confidence about you. You have this energy and positive confidence. And sort of the judgment that you had for everyone else, even in the book, the way you spoke of people, like you always say, don't judge me, respect me for who I am. I'm a human being. But on the other hand, you had a lot of it because you had so many insecurities, it seemed, understandably
Of
so.
course. Yes, of course. I had many insecurities. I didn't see me.
Right.
I didn't think I had value. And I was looking to other people to provide me with that value.
Yes.
But I realized that I had to find it in myself. And I looked at it as this, as a trans person, you are really like outcast. You are the outcast that the richest, the most educated, the poorest, the most marginalized, the most oppressed will still look at you as being beneath them and still fetishize you.
Fetish or fantasize or is it
Fetishize.
fantasize?
Fetishize. A lot of
Fetishize.
trans people are fetishized and hated. Fetishized and hated.
Right.
All at the same time.
It's interesting because when you think about like a Caitlyn Jenner, who came out but late in life, she didn't experience what you experienced as a child, so and yet that's a name that we all know, or what is it, Laverne Cox is a name we might know, but whereas a lot of them, I don't think they either knew it or knew what to do.
So it's different. It's different for everyone, right?
Right.
And if you are, and children learn. Children are not really guided. You're
Right.
told what you're supposed to be. You're told what you're supposed to become. Because if you're not, you are then disappointing your parents, and then they're supposed to take care of you, right? So you don't get to really be yourself. And then when you are living that societal truth, which is you
Right.
have to grow up, you have to have this family, you have to have the 2.5 kids. You have many men across America that are suffering, and not just men, women also. People got married not for love.
Right.
They thought they loved, but they realized that's why the divorce rate is so high. My sister Raquel Willis and Angelica Ross were just discussing how there's now a shift in realizing that the idea that everyone has to have this marriage and the 2.5 kids has been a partial cause destruction in our communities.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you're going after a societal plan. You're not going after your plan. And we make people feel that their plan, if it's not with society, it's wrong.
Right. Well, conventional, wisdom, they call sometimes convention. It's the word conventional because of that, specific. We go with the flow that we've seen before. We follow the past. So history repeats itself, right?
Exactly. And that's where you have the damaging. So for people that are trans or people who don't adhere to that, we're starting to realize now this is not something that makes you broken. This is something that actually makes you really smart. If I had went off and attempted to have children or something like that to satisfy this desire that to cover up my truth, right? I would now have kids. Well, I wasn't able to have kids, but I would now have not only to deal with my issues, but to also deal with how am I supposed to guide my kids with them understanding who I am. And if you don't understand yourself, how are you going to explain it to someone else? Exactly. So with Caitlyn Jenner and things like that, I really don't discuss topics like that because I
I
see
understand.
individuality.
Of course.
I do believe also that I look more to the joys, those that are understanding of inclusivity. And Laverne Cox is a really amazing woman. And I love the way that she comes across because in coming across, it's not, we at times tend to feel like in speaking out, we're speaking our truth. And sometimes you're not speaking your truth, you're speaking harm because your truth is individual. What we have to do is consider that we have to be civil. And a part of etiquette is understanding that if everyone is presenting all of them without any kind of control, you will have chaos. So you
Right.
must be able to understand yourself, control yourself, and be able to present and relate yourself in any space that is opening and welcoming.
Well, that's opening and welcoming. I'm just in this area of curiosity right now because I'm so I'm so straight. It's kind of boring, and I just sort of wish I was a little more. I don't know, more. I have some jagged edges, of course, but we went to see a show about Christine Jorgensen recently, and I was
Uh-huh.
just so happy to see that there was a show like that here on the Upper East Side in New York about, a woman in 1950s. She went through the transgender affirmation surgery,
Well,
and
gender affirming surgery.
she became sort of so public about it, or it was well publicized at finally in the 50s. And then you didn't really, then it kind of, you didn't hear much. I don't know about it in the
Well,
60s
she also,
afterwards.
well, because, if they're
And she
not
was on
talking about
Hollywood,
it
of
all
course.
the time, then you kind of get to live your life, And so the entire idea is for us to realize that we're human beings. And what she did was she set up a role model because for someone like me, when I came into my being, there were many representations of the type of woman that I could be. And I had to pick apart from here, pick apart from there, and then process them to see if they actually aligned with me, or if I was just trying to trend, or if it was really just a part of me. And so Christine Jorgensen's story really helped me to know that yes, I can. Along with Tracy Africa Norman, along with Janet Mock, these women were out there living their lives. And in living their lives and in living their truth, it was representation. So it's very important for us to see that we all deserve a space because we all have to see. And when you talk about having a show like that on the Upper East Side, that goes to show you that, yes, we want to live in a world that we try to make comfortable for us. So we stay naive to the things that are actually going on because of course we're afraid of the things we don't know. But unless you do your research, unless you put yourself in a position to find out about it without bias, then you will learn a lot more about this world. You will learn a lot about the similarities that we have intermingled within our cultures. If you're going to take this stance of this is what I know, this is my tradition, and I'm from here, so I have to act this way and I have to be this way, then you're actually doing yourself an injustice. My fiance and I, our ability to be able to travel, when I hear him speak about going back to his homeland, Puerto Rico, or us going to Barcelona, and, we haven't been to Africa yet. And I really need that part. We lost that opportunity a few years ago, but I hope we can get it back. Yes, but as we travel and we see different cultures, and that's not even just different cultures, it's different communities and how they bond and how they live. It's not to criticize it. It's to admire it, learn from it. We come from a space a lot of times of seeing things and we're already ready to criticize because of the small boxes that are our lives. Live outside of that box that is your life.
Well,
And know that there are other things that exist.
It's funny in the book when you talk about Christmas and going skiing, and none of your family really skied. I mean, your biological family, but you're like this kick-ass skier, and then got bored with it, and then started snowboarding, and like no one could keep up with you. And I think you spoke about your ex and you and you were just like killing it. And I was just like, you just have this spirit of adventure, and you're like curious. You're curious.
I do. I am very, very, very curious. And I try not to have judgment when I find out a thing. And that was a part of growth also. But snowboarding and skiing, I wanted to go out on dates, and my ex-husband was not the type to go out on dates. I think that's one of the reasons we're not together anymore, and the abuse and whatever, the toxic masculinity. But snowboarding gave me an opportunity to be out. I didn't realize at the time I was fighting agoraphobia. So snowboarding gave me an opportunity to be covered, not have people looking at me, judging me, or seeing anything, and just be out there, because the air, being in the mountains, just the snow, the ability to get down that mountain on a board and learn something new, break a few nails. Yeah, it has been fun. Hit some jumps and rails. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that seems like one of your outlets, at least a physical outlet, besides when you get on that runway and I see you walk. I mean, you don't walk, you perform. It's I don't know if it's a strut, I don't know if it's a catwalk, I don't know what it is, but you, like that Terry Mugler outfit where the top moved and you moved with it. It was just it's really almost like a fantasy watching you move, and then watching you teach other people dance steps and how to walk and how to move. Is so great to see how you've been able to be a mentor to these people.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Honestly, I saw Naomi Campbell, Tyra Banks, of course, were the ones you would think that taught me my walk. They actually were the ones that polished it. Beverly Peel, Beverly Johnson, of course, the queen herself, the goddess Iman, Queen Naomi, Queen Tyra. These women were on the runways and they had this poise and grace about themselves. They were intelligent. They stood strong, bold.
I remember one other one Shannon mentioned to me, that I was so curious if you looked like what you thought of Giselle Extravaganza,
Giselle is my sister.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Giselle is Giselle is a chosen and proven sister. We share the same dad, Hector Extravaganza, may God bless his soul. And of course, in Ballroom, we competed. But Giselle is beautiful. She's amazing. She sings. She is just an awesome human being. A lot of women in Ballroom you would find are very much nurturing. But we also have to understand that a lot of us have been through a lot in life. And, we have to really take care of ourselves. But back to the one that taught me to walk. It was actually a woman by the name of Maxine Denoon. She was dating my older cousin, whose sister put on a fashion show at a place called Fairfield Complex in Tobago. And we had rehearsals. And this girl comes out, and she starts to walk down the runway, and she is gliding. And it is just this. Gliding. And immediately I'm like focused. I didn't know she could do that. She is a very poised woman. As a girl, it seemed like she moved in slow motion, but because it was just so graceful. Mm-hmm. And when she walked, there was just this poise and grace. So I just started to learn from her. I just kept her in my head, and then I saw her walk a few times and do a few shows. And I thought to myself, if the opportunities arose, she would have been like another Naomi Campbell.
Wow.
She was just that amazing.
Did you start to research other people's walk? Did you practice in front of the mirror? Did you take lessons?
No. When I got into Ballroom, they said, you're going to walk right. They saw me walk and they said, oh my gosh. So they were like, you look like Naomi. You walk like Naomi, but we're going to call you Tyra. I said, okay. And I loved it. And that's where I got my father, Enrique, and my mother, Aria. God bless her soul. She's no longer with us. He is still with us. And I have a few fathers and mothers. Yes. And
by the way, I have a few fathers too. I did. I have two last names.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting when you think about how did pose come into the picture, because obviously there's a very different part you played, and it was about the ballroom world, right? And they created that, and then you were a part of the ballroom world, which, if you could just define for the audience, what is ballroom?
Ballroom is a brave space where a lot of marginalized and oppressed people that are not allowed to be in society, who are of the LGBTQIA plus community. It's a space where we get to come together and show off our talents, we've created our own culture, which is now international and global. Voguing is mostly the avatar, but we have different categories in ballroom. And ballroom is not just about the competition. With these houses, we form these families that are for life. These families at times actually replace, in a very positive way, the families that neglect and ostracize their children. If you've ever been to a ballroom competition, you will know that we can be very feisty. And if you've watched polls, you can see that you are taught to build this resilience. Some of us already have it, but you're taught to build up a resilience to know that when you step into a space outside of ballroom, you have to carry your everything with you. You know, you have to be ready to present your best. You have to be so great that you can't be denied.
Got it. So there's no denying you. I love that. In the ballroom world, were there like top competitors and contenders that always were like constantly winning?
Yes.
Like a
And
tennis
those
match?
yes. And those were the ones you went after.
Okay.
Those were the ones that you had to go after. If I walked a category called runway, and I also walked face. And face was not really about how you looked. It was about how you sold it. You had to convince people you were sexy. Ballroom taught us a lot about convincing the world, showing the world that you are beautiful. Yes, I am this great. I believe so much in myself that you can't deny me. So we competed against each other, as in any other pageant. There are just many different categories, and individual categories as a house, but all, mostly in fun competition.
So it sounds like Miss Universe or Miss America in some ways, but without the categories where they'd ask you questions about that you wouldn't be interviewed, right?
So think of it like this: competition, the beauty competition, the face competition would be just one of the competitions of that night. Yes. And then the Vogue competition would have many different categories, like Femme Queen performance, Butch Queen performance, old way performance. So we break down these categories into a way that people are able to have fun and showcase their talents. There are categories for designers. There are categories for impersonation. There are categories for sex siren, which is all about the body and the physique, the aesthetic of how you look. And there's runway, one of the categories that I am an icon for, where you literally walk runway. And it's not only just about walking runway, it's about the attitude, it's about the effect. So ballroom is a space where it's almost like a volleyball like any competitive group that you would have. Ballroom is that, and then some. Ballroom is that with a family unit that is attached to it. Ballroom has influenced so much of our culture. Like when you hear people talk about what's the tea, that came from ballroom.
Oh wow!
When you hear people talk about throwing shade, that comes from ballroom. So when you look at like the Real Housewives shows and some of reality TV, and you see the way that some of the women are acting, they are actually emulating the women of ballroom. Yes. The bodies, the attitudes, the nails, the femme queen is a woman that is in her sexiness, in her beauty, in her gorgeousness. She admires everything about herself.
And you were a femme queen, right?
I didn't claim my femme queen power for a very long time, but now I do. Because yes, I am. Because I am beautiful. I know how to sell it. And selling it is, I will make you drop those dollars and not want you.
Wow. I want to be there when I'm going to drop my dollars and watch other people. Since the show's called Trailblazers, Innovators, and Rule Breakers, there were rules you broke along the way. Is there one specific one that you could say, oh, Cindy, whether it was I snuck in the back or I had to behave one way even though I was doing something other than what I was supposed to be doing? Like, was there a specific rule that got you ahead? Because we know that breaking the rules is part of the game that we play, and it's part of business.
For me, I have to say, when you talk about breaking the rules, I feel like I have broken every rule possible. Because coming from a small island such as Tobago and being the woman that people see me as today, sometimes I don't even see myself as the woman other people see me as, but I'm coming to understand that.
Yes.
But coming from where I come from, you don't accomplish these things. So I believe that I didn't just break one rule. I not only broke the rules, but I opened the door for others to say, yeah, and I'm claiming that now because I've been told that so many times. I have opened the door for others to say, damn it, I'm going to be me. And maybe I may not talk to my mother and my family for a few years, but I'm going to be me. Maybe that man took advantage of me, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to write that into my story. I'm going to make it not the part that destroyed me, but the part that motivated me to move forward, to help others to not have to go through the same thing, or to be there to support others who have gone through the same thing. I had to find my strength to save me.
Well, you never clearly gave up because you're here today, and I'm sure you're doing some other amazing things, and you've rewritten the rules. And I know you had a community organization. Was it in the Bronx that you worked with, or?
Yes, I worked with Destination Tomorrow, one of my brothers, and talking about community, helping community. After I got off a show called Strut, executive produced by Whoopi Goldberg and Tom Leonardis, I got the call that we were not going back to do a second season. And my brother had just opened, not just opened his agency, but had just found working space and was able to hire people. And I said to him one night, driving home from an event, I said, these people at this organization asked me to come work for them. And he looks at me and he goes, how dare you say something like that to me? And I'm like, what did I do wrong?
Exactly.
And he says, you're working for me. You're working not for me, but you're going to work with me. And so it was Destination Tomorrow. And since then, my amazing brother, Sean Coleman, has built Destination Tomorrow as an organization that is now housing people, helping people, providing income for those that were not able to have an income, to fair wages, livable wages. I mean, like the company the employees were paid during COVID. So that's to tell you what hard work does. And he's not a millionaire or anything, went through his own struggles. He's from Ballroom, my brother. So with that, that's why I am so affiliated with Destination Tomorrow. I will always back him because I know what it takes to start a journey from absolutely nothing and to grow it into something. And the hardest fight is when you grow into something to attempt to maintain it.
Yes. Well, you've maintained it and you continue to grow it. And I have to say, in honor of, I think the last, I don't know, was it about 100 pages, double spaced, of course, but of this incredible book that people need to buy. And I love the fact that you have this paragraph that says, many of the transgenders, brothers and sisters who departed the earth prematurely and extremely violently in memory, I pray that their tender souls have peace despite that some may never have justice. I have used many sources to compile this memorial, but there are many that have not been recorded. And of course, you did this quite some time ago. But I love that you put, everyone from Venus, of course, Extravaganza, that was part of, I guess the movie Paris is Burning, and many others there, and honoring them in your book is really special. And I want to thank you for doing that. I have a newsletter, which is about being the muse for and having muses and mentors, which you have that in your DNA. And so we must continue that on. And
thank you so much. Thank you, Sandy. It has been a pleasure to share this space with you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Inside the She Cave. Please subscribe to the show, share, and leave a review. Thank you.